Behind every report, there's an incident, usually so damaging and devastating that in the moment, change is presented as non-negotiable. But does it happen? The rape, kidnap and murder of Sarah Everard by Wayne Couzens, a serving Metropolitan Police officer at the time, prompted the Casey Review, a deep dive into the Met's internal misconduct system. The conclusion? Systemic racial bias and misogyny, a system not fit for purpose.
As the arbiter of this report, do you feel the weight of responsibility? Another report, more words, but ultimately no change.
I think I feel a weight of responsibility for the people that we have listened to in the Metropolitan Police. I'm hoping that they will not put this report on another shelf and that they won't continue to be in denial. The biggest thing about changing a mindset is that you have to accept that the problem exists.
Misconduct cases take 400 days to resolve on average. Too long, says the review. And there's more. 60% of allegations receive a no case to answer decision. Some managers dissuade staff from lodging complaints. And patterns of unacceptable behaviour aren't identified. 20% of all officers facing allegations had more than one complaint raised against them. In one case, an officer had 11 misconduct cases raised against him. Allegations of abuse, sexual harassment, sexual violence and fraud. That officer is still serving. And the testimony in this review is damning. A female staff member was told that if she fell asleep on a night shift, then she couldn't claim that there was no consent to unwanted sexual touching.
The Verdi report,
yeah.
The Morris report, the Independent Advisory Group report, that's just some of them.
Gurpal Verdi retired from the Met this year. He was a former detective sergeant and, he says, a target because he raised the issue of racism.
They came for me in a big way. I mean, they started making criminal allegations against me, which had no basis. And it all goes up to the senior levels. And that's the problem. When you have somebody who's willing to stand up to deal with the issues or make suggestions, you're criminalised, or you're ostracised, or you're forced to leave.
On Mr Verdi's case, the Met has previously said it's invested in improvements of recording internal discrimination complaints so that it's better able to identify victimisation. Last year, black officers and staff were 81% more likely than white officers to face misconduct allegations. Asian officers were 55% more likely.
There is a lot of gaslighting where we're seen to be the problem, or it may be us that are exacerbating the problem, that we are looking for racism anywhere, and that the data just isn't there to back it up when it clearly is.
Sir Mark Rowley says this is a sobering moment for the Met.
I'm not entirely shocked, but I'm angry. I think after 20 years of such reports, even though we've made progress in many ways, we clearly haven't looked deep enough at ourselves. And Dame Louise makes clear there isn't a rapid solution to this.
Mark Rowley has said the report is painful, he's apologised, he's pledged reform. Why should anyone believe him?
Well, why should anyone believe him? I mean, I think that's an absolutely, fair comment. I happen to think that the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner and his team have no choice but to get this right.
Well, as we heard there in Ria's report, each time the Met fails in its duties, there are consequences, and sometimes they're devastating. In July last year, a member of the public became concerned about the welfare of a woman who they'd spotted alone in a park late at night. They alerted two Met officers who were attending a separate incident, but the officers didn't check on the woman. Her name was Natalie Schotter, and she was found dead the next morning. A man has been arrested in connection with her death, but the two officers who failed to check on her did not face dismissal. Now, in her first interview, Natalie's mother has told this programme that she believes, had they done their duty, her daughter would still be alive, and that the Met is misogynistic. Kaz, first of all, can you tell me a little bit about your daughter?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. She was a beautiful soul, very much loved by her family, and was just wonderful with people, just really wonderful, yeah.
And can you tell me about what happened to her?
I was nursing my father who was dying, so I got a call from the Met Police to say that that Natalie had died in a park, and they had something else to tell us. Unfortunately, two policemen had been asked to assist her and didn't do so, and they were going to be investigated.
An internal investigation seen by Channel 4 News found that the officers failed to take appropriate action after receiving the report about Natalie's welfare. Both officers expressed their regret at mistakes made, but the Met decided it didn't warrant further misconduct action or dismissal.
I'm absolutely appalled by that. I'm appalled. This is a young woman's life.
One of the officers says, I wasn't told it was a woman.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Both officers say they're very sorry. Both officers say they've let the police down in terms of how they handled this.
Yes.
Is that enough for you?
No. When I saw in their statements that they referred to the fact that they let the Met down, that really got to me. Because I felt they were more concerned about letting the Met down than actually letting the family down and letting Nat down.
Is that explanation enough in terms of incompetence as opposed to misogyny?
No, I think misogyny is the word. It's the word. It fits.
And what does
That's
that
how I
feel like for you?
Horror. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like horror.
What do you think that says, in your view, about Metropolitan Police and some attitudes towards women, which have been raised a lot, obviously, since the death of Sarah Everard?
I think it's in plain sight for all to see. Certainly the Baroness Casey report has already identified the flaws. This is not a hearsay. This is evidence, hard fact evidence.
As you go forward without your daughter, your daughter's children go forward without their mother, how do you cope?
One day at a time. One day at a time. We all just do our best. We want the children to be well. She's right with us. She is like the sky. She's everywhere, absolutely everywhere around us.
How do you best choose to remember her?
By her laugh, funny enough. She had an infectious laugh, yeah. And she was just such a good soul, kind-hearted. And that piece of her is missing from us as a family, which is hard.
Thanks very much for talking to us today.
You're very welcome.
The mother of Natalie Shotter speaking to me earlier. Well, a Met spokesperson told News that the officer's actions in Natalie Shotter's case did not amount to misconduct, but that it would look again at Natalie's mother's concerns.